Most artists copy routines from their heroes, but here's what nobody tells you. Those routines were You see, discipline alone won't save you. How do you actually switch it on when life is pulling you in every direction? Maya Angelou, Beethoven, Van Gogh, they weren't running on discipline. They were If your creative routine keeps collapsing, this is why you struggled. Here's what I want you to do. For 1 week, I studied hundreds of creative geniuses across every domain, genre, and movement. Painters, poets, musicians, filmmakers, you name it. Because I wanted to know what's the best creative routine. And so I tried all of them. Morning routines, night routines, hour by hour schedules, copying the habits of everyone I admired. And you know what? None of them worked. Because here's the thing. Most artists copy routines from their heroes. But here's what nobody tells you. Those routines were custom built for their creative brain, not yours. Your creativity is uniquely wired for you. And so I took a step back and I stopped asking, what did they do? And I started asking, what made it work for them? And that's when I saw one common thread. The hidden truth in plain sight. That the greatest creative routines don't work like schedules. They work like electricity, flowing through circuits. And an electrical circuit only works if every connection is complete. If one link breaks, the current stops flowing. And today, I'm going to show you exactly how to wire your creative routine so that it actually generates creative power instead of just burning you out. If your creative routine keeps collapsing, this is why you struggled. Not because you're lazy, not because you lack discipline. Your circuit isn't complete. You don't understand your wiring. But today, I'm going to lift the veil and explain it to you. The 4 key electrical connections I wrote down in my notes to show you exactly how to build your circuit. And when you get all 4 connections right, your creativity becomes as reliable as flipping a light switch. Your best ideas, your best abilities flows through you. All right, let's begin. The first link is one that almost everyone overlooks. It's voltage. Think of this as your creative power source. You see, discipline alone won't save you. Without voltage, without a power source, your routine is just an empty shell. Why do you think Ed Sheeran played at hundreds of tiny gigs before anyone knew his name? Why do you think that Brandon Sanderson kept writing 13 unpublished novels before a publisher finally said yes? 13. And why do you think Vivian Maier took hundreds of photographs of city life and never showed them to anyone? It's because they weren't running on discipline. They were plugged into a current they couldn't turn off. A current called obsession, curiosity, a question they couldn't stop chasing. Every great creator had one. For Maya Angelou, it was the human spirit under pressure. For Beethoven, it was emotional storytelling through sound. Van Gogh had sunflowers, James Cameron had the ocean, Toni Morrison had memory. So what's yours? Well, here's how you find it. List 10 things that you've made or dreamed of making. It could be paintings or songs or stories, whatever. Just look for the pattern, the theme that keeps showing up, the feeling you keep chasing, the problem that won't leave you alone. That's your voltage. That's the current humming under your skin. For me, it was always, how can I help people unlock their creative potential? And over the past 10 years, I've helped over 100,000 people, from kids all the way up to the elderly around the world, do just that. That's my voltage. Every creative routine that I build has to feed that current. And your voltage, it might be completely different. Maybe it's like, what would the world look like if humans looked at life through the eyes of other animals? Or how could I help people feel less alone in their love life? Once you find it, your routine must feed it daily. Even if it's just 10 minutes, that's enough, because your spark doesn't need hours. It just needs to stay lit. Real quick, if you want all my notes on creativity, all my best insights, just tap the link in the description and tell me where to email them to you. Okay, so here's the question. Once you find your voltage, how do you actually switch it on when life is pulling you in every direction? Well, that takes us to the second link, current. This is about understanding how your energy flows from one state to another. I noticed a lot of creative people fall into a dangerous trap. They try to go straight from life mode into creative mode. And you can't go from checking Instagram to creating your masterpiece. You can't binge on Netflix and then instantly expect to write a brilliant chapter. You can't jump straight from answering Slack notifications to composing a song with depth. Your brain just doesn't work that way. But the secret is that every strong creative routine has a transition, a predictable series of small steps that shift your brain into gear. You need what I call a momentum ritual, a ritual that flips the switch in your brain. Haruki Murakami once said, "The repetition itself becomes the important thing. It's a form of mesmerism. I mesmerize myself to reach a deeper state of mind." Your momentum ritual should mesmerize you into a deeper state. And the solid momentum ritual has 3 stages: detach, prime, and commit. I think the best way to explain it is to share mine as inspiration. So, the first thing you do is detach. The hardest part of keeping a routine today isn't procrastination, it's distraction. And so, detaching is when you remove distractions. For me, it's really just 2 things. I close the door and I put my phone on do not disturb. All right, the next thing is that you prime yourself. You trigger your senses. For me, I play binaural beats and I turn on a soft orange salt lamp. And then, depending on my mood, depending on the vibe, I try to go for either laying down in my bed or I raise this desk up so that I could work standing up. These tiny actions stimulate my senses and tell my brain that it's time to create. And the last stage is commit. You need to take one tiny action so small that it's impossible to resist. So I'll write the opening line to a sentence or paint a stroke or draw a line on my drawing, just something small. And here's the beauty. Once you start, momentum takes over. The whole sequence should only take like 5 minutes max, but it's the difference between wrestling with resistance for an hour and sliding into flow like a surfer catching the perfect wave. But here's the thing, even with a ritual, there's still one massive mistake that kills more routines than anything else. And it has to do with when you're creating, not how. But before we get into that, I want to tell you a bit more about this standing desk that I mentioned earlier. You see, the reason I started standing is because I noticed it in Ernest Hemingway's creative routine. He would put a heavy typewriter on top of a bookcase and hammer out sentences back to back. Hemingway claimed that standing up while he worked kept his energy high and his mind sharp. And over time, this habit became a signature part of his creative routine. And it even inspired other creative legends like Virginia Woolf and Winston Churchill just to experiment with their own standing setups. And so, like every other pattern that I see in my notes, I tried it myself. And it really worked for me too. And so I get the opportunity to stand while I create thanks to today's sponsor, FlexiSpot. So FlexiSpot isn't just my first ever sponsor on this channel. They also make really good desks for creative people. This thing is built like a tank. Like the two motors adjust smoothly from 26 inches to up to over 50, and it stays rock solid even when I'm typing or moving around. No wobbles, no distractions, just very, very stable. It could hold up to 440 pounds, which means that I can load up all my gear, my cameras, my dual monitors, books, whatever my project demands, and it doesn't even flinch. And here's what I love most about it. It adapts to my creative rhythm. I could sit when I'm sketching, stand when I'm brainstorming, even raise it higher to film overhead shots. It's one desk with endless creative setups. And right now, FlexiSpot is running their 9th anniversary sale with up to 65% off, plus a chance to win your order for free. And if you use my code, and I'll show you here, you'll save an extra $50 off your desk, the E7 Pro. Just head to flexispot.com, and if you pick one up, just leave a note at checkout saying World of Creatives. That support really means a lot. Because for me, this wasn't just about getting a desk. It was a reminder that my environment matters to me. And when your space supports your creativity, your routine finally has a chance to stick. All right, let's keep going with these links. So for the third link, there's surge. This has to do with knowing when your creative energy peaks, because every brain has natural windows when it catches fire. Some people are creative monsters at 5 a.m. Others don't come alive until midnight. Most routines fail because you schedule creative work when your creative energy is only at 20%. Here's what I want you to do. For 1 week, track your energy, not your schedule, your energy. When do you feel most alert? When do ideas come easiest? When does your brain feel like it's running on rocket fuel instead of mud? Write down when you feel most sharp, most alive, electric. Those are your surge windows. And once you find them, make those windows of time untouchable. Protect them, guard them, because they're sacred. Errands can wait, emails can wait, the world can wait. Your craft cannot. Inside those windows, you create. Outside of them, you can handle life. This one shift alone can double the power of your routine. But here's the catch. Even if you create during your surge windows, your circuit will still fail if you forget the last link. And this one is the difference between a routine that collapses in months and a routine that lasts for decades. The fourth and final link is recharge, the input that powers your output. You see, creativity burns energy like crazy. Every time you make something, you spend from the battery. And without recharging, the circuit dies. But here's where most people get it wrong. They recharge passively. They zone out on Netflix or scroll through social media. That's not recharging. That's just existing. The best creators recharge with intention. They curate their inputs. They choose things that light them up but feel completely different from their main work. If you're a writer, maybe you visit some art museums. If you're a painter, maybe you listen to some podcast about science. If you're a musician, maybe you read poetry. The one and only rule I have for you, though, is simple. It must energize you, but it can't feel like your main creative work. That separation is what keeps the spark alive because your output is only as strong as your input. I spend time studying completely different industries from technology, psychology, philosophy, science, all because it feeds my creative brain in ways that studying other creators never could. Okay, so we have voltage, flow, surge, and recharge. Your underlying obsession, your creative why that pretty much powers everything. Your ritual, your transition sequence that gets you from life mode to creative mode. Your protected peak creative windows. And your curated inputs that fuel your best output. This is the circuit. This is the rhythm. That's the pulse of routine that actually works. When all four links are connected and working together, your creativity becomes predictable, reliable, and powerful. So stop copying other people's schedules. They're not wired for your brain. They're not built for your obsession. You need to wire your own because the world doesn't need more artists chasing discipline. It needs creators who can complete their own circuit. And once you do, the current won't stop. Not for a day, and definitely not for a lifetime.